Hello, listeners. Welcome back to the latest Arcade Attack podcast. I've got another really exciting guest on today's show, a real SEGA legend. We've had many SEGA proteges in the past, Michael Latham. We've had Eric Wahlberg, Eric Quakenbush. But we got Ed Annunziata. I can't pronounce his name very well. Ed, please give us your proper surname, please.
Annunziata.
Annunziata. Ed, it's such an honor to speak to you, and we are huge fans of your games and your career, and it really is a pleasure to get you on the show. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Good to be here. Thank you.
I want to ask many questions today about your time at SEGA and beyond, but I've got like a kind of sort of generic kind of overview question to start, because you've been in the gaming industry, and correct me if I'm wrong, for I think over 20 years now. You've had a really
easy 30.
It's an amazing 30 years, sorry, is that?
No. Yeah. I'm old.
I mean, it's an amazing stretch, and some people that you know very well have left the industry or they got burnt out or went on to the other projects or whatnot. I'd love to know what makes you love the art of gaming so much initially, and why you stayed in that industry. And we're happy you are, obviously, but you've had a long, successful career. What makes you love the gaming industry so much, if you don't mind?
So, wow, how do you answer that? So early on, when I got involved, 8-bit games back on the Atari 800 or Apple II. I learned how to program and started to make games, and it was fun. And I just kept doing it. And I think over time, my brain wired to game development or game design. So I just find myself going through life, looking at everything and wondering, can that be a game? Can taking a toll on a bridge be a game? Or can giving someone a haircut and a blow dry be a game? It's like everything that happens in real life, I ask the question, is this a gameable mechanism? And sometimes the answer is yes, and it's fun to explore that. So I guess I'm obsessed with making games, but also now that I've done it for a really long time, I think I have more of like a philosophical feeling about game development. Like, I think it's a bigger endeavor than people realize when you're in it for a long time, because you're simulating a reality and you're a god. Like, you make an entire reality and with its own rules, and then you let it go and you let it run. And if it's like a good game and it's fun, it runs a lot and it just keeps running because many people are playing it. And you just I feel that it's very satisfying to sort of unleash something that's kind of emergent and runs on its own. It's almost alive. So to me, that's just like it's a beautiful thing. To, like, if you were a sculptor and you made a beautiful sculpture, a statue, and you could be proud of it, it's awesome. But like, to have a game that runs and is alive, you feed it energy, and it runs a little tiny universe inside the chips of your computer. It just I don't know. It's just so cool, and it's almost science fiction. And then the other thing, I really like the idea. There's that saying, like, you die twice. You die when your body dies, and then you die when the last person who remembers you doesn't speak your name again.
Yeah.
Well, also, you die 3 times, actually. You die when your code stops running. That's the final death. So it's like, right now, there's probably 4 or 5 people in the world right at this moment playing Ecco the Dolphin. Probably one person is playing 3 Dirty Dwarves, and then Shakan the Forever Man probably gets played every once in a while. And at any moment in time, somebody's playing one of my games, and I think that's the coolest thing. And even if they're not, I just tell myself that they are, and it's just as satisfying. So my goal is, before I die, is to make as many games as I can. And that's it.
That's an amazing answer, Ed. I appreciate that, and I agree with you. That I bet there is people around the world right now playing your video games, because you've created some pretty big and epic titles, and these are huge games. And wow, I love that answer. Thank you.
You're welcome.
How did you get in the gaming industry? Was SEGA your first job, or did you have other opportunities before that particular part of your career?
Well, I was just, when I was a kid, I was just starting to get into computers, and I'm a boy, and video games are starting to occur. So I just love video games, and when I got a little computer that I ordered from a magazine, and I tried to make like a little man walk across the screen. That's all I wanted to do. So I learned how to do that, and I made this little man made out of like text blocks, and basically reprinted him over and over again to make it look like he was walking. But the computer was so slow that it didn't look like the little man was walking. It just looked like it was just being redrawn over and over again as it moved across the screen. Too slow, too ridiculous. And I couldn't understand, like, how do video games, how are they so fast and responsive when my little walking man, couldn't make it across the screen in like 10 seconds. It's just way too slow. So then I discovered and I remember the feeling that when I discovered there's this thing called machine language, which is, assembly language, or what the CPU operates on. So this is the lowest level. This is like talking to the metal. And if you want to make something fast and responsive, you want to make a video game, you have to do it in machine language. So not knowing it was a difficult thing, I started to learn how to do that. And as soon as I made a man walk across the screen in machine language or assembly language, then I was hooked, because he ran across the screen and it was smooth. And then I had to figure out a way to slow it down, like to put a little spin loop to eat up time in between each frame of animation. Otherwise, he just filled the screen with instances of the little walking man. So that I felt like I went like beyond the veil into a territory of magic, which was this machine language. And then that was it. I was hooked. And then me and my buddy Mike made a game, Pyramid Run, like in the 80s sometime, and sold it, made money, and I was like, hey, there's a career here. Then I got a job making educational games, which I loved. I love making educational games and games for kids. So I did that for a long time, and that was in New York. And then the company, opened up a development studio out here in California, and I raised my hand to volunteer to move to California with everybody else, and that was great. Came out here, and as soon as I came out here in California, I got a call from a headhunter looking for a project manager at SEGA of America. And I'm like, yes, please give me this job. So I went in, interviewed there. I brought my Mac to show them some stuff I've been working on, even a game about a dolphin.
Wow.
And pitched the whole thing, pitched myself, and I got the job. So then I started producing Sega Genesis titles. And I should stop talking now and let you ask another question.
Well, no, Ed, I love hearing this, and I mean, we could talk all about your earlier career. I know that Sega you're known for a lot of things. What was your first game at Sega though? Was it Shakan? Is that right, or was it other?
No. The very first one was Abrams Battle Tank,
Right.
which
And
it was
truthfully.
it was a half a megabyte cartridge, and it was the first 3D game I ever worked on,
Wow.
and it was a 3D tank game, and with a blazingly fast 7 frames per second, like 4-color 3D display technology. But it was great. And that was the very first. That's actually the very first Sega of America title published for Genesis or Mega Drive.
Wow.
Yeah, and then after that, 688 Attack Sub, which I loved, and at first I didn't. I was like a submarine simulator. It's like, but then I got into it and I learned about it, and it was fascinating, and I enjoyed it. And then after that, Spider-Man versus the Kingpin, and all along the way, I'm pushing my Dolphin game, and I can't get any love. No one wants the Dolphin game. So I just kept at it, and eventually I got it.
Well, you thought of Echo. What you thought of a Dolphin game before you joined Sega? Is that what you said, Ed? And did you? Was it?
Yeah. Well, so
before. I'd love to know.
Before I went to Sega, I was working for a company called Sunburst Communications, and we were making this multimedia package called Voyage of the Mimi, which is about a little boy who spends the summer on his grandfather's boat, and they track and observe sperm whales for the whole summer. So it was all about, little Ben Affleck, his first paid gig. He was like 12.
Nice.
And learning about whales. So I was involved with the software for that, and I learned all about sea mammals. And then I read this book. I forgot the Seals, I think, is the name of the author, but the name of the book is The Sounding, and it's a novel from the point of view of a sperm whale. And I obsessed over that book and that story. And of course, I'm starting my life as the guy who keeps asking, is that a game? Could that be a game? Could that be a game? Yeah. So I'm looking at whales and, echolocation and the whole thing about how they evolved. And there's so many incredibly fascinating things about whales, not to mention, they're like super intelligent. So I'm like, how could I make a game out of this subject matter? And so the Dolphin, especially the sine wave going in and out of the water, buoyancy to gravity, back to buoyancy, that whole thing really felt good very early on. And I knew it would be a fun game. Like, I wasn't sure anybody would buy it, but I was certain it would feel good. Yeah, that's it.
Did you approach the people at Sega quite often and say, look, I'll work on this game, but I've got this great idea? Was it you almost earning your sort of bread first, showing you what you can do to get that opportunity? Yeah,
maybe. I think it was more like I kept trying, but I was very sheepish about it. I wasn't too assertive. Like,
oh, okay.
I would try, and then I wouldn't get any love, and then I'd back off a little, and it's sort of like I wanted to ask the question, will you let me make this game? And if the answer was no, I really couldn't ask the question again. So I never really put it to the point where, I would get the no. I wanted to avoid the no. But so I'd push it to various people, just trying to get any kind of love. And I think the problem, I know the problem was, it was just, no one really thought about a game without an inventory, without a gun, without feet to run around. So it was just too weird on too many fronts. Yeah. But then we had this awesome meeting in Las Vegas when we were there for CES. And Tom Kalinske, who was president of Sega of America at the time, gave this speech about how, we got to do something different. We have to make games that have never been seen before, like big, bold, goals that he was setting for us all. And as he's saying this, I'm like looking around at people saying, like, what about my Dolphin game?
Yeah.
It kind of fits what Tom is asking for almost exactly. And I think that's when I got the yes, like right after that speech, like at that dinner. That's when I think I convinced Al Nielsen and Hugh Bowen and a few other marketing people. They're like, hey, yeah, maybe this Dolphin thing. Yeah. And then I saw it show up on documents and like Dolphin. Hey, Dolphin, that must be my Dolphin. Nice. And then finally was able to build it. It was great.
I want to talk more about Ecco in a minute, but is that so? Shakan, was that before or after Ecco? Did you make that before?
After almost at the same time.
Yeah, I was going to say
it was after. Yeah, Shakan. That's a great one because I was actually working on another title called, it ended up being called Warriors of the Eternal Sun. It was a Dungeons and Dragons game.
Nice,
for the Genesis. And I was, as a kid, I was into Dungeons and Dragons, and I was really psyched to work on that title and very enthusiastic. So the first thing I did was go to this convention, Gen Con, and where is it? Is it Milwaukee? I can't even remember where it is. But so I go there, and there's like, tens of thousands of D&D people who, of course, are the coolest people in the world. So I'm like, I'm in heaven.
Yeah.
And I'm like sitting in on these like big D&D games, and these kids are playing the modules that my video game is going to be based on. So I'm learning all this mythology sort of the pace of the game, and I'm just loving life, thinking how this whole game could come together, and being part of this community. And it was great too, because I would be like, hey, I'm making a Dungeons and Dragons video game. Can I sit in on your campaign? And I got so much love, and it was great. So the section of the show of the con where you buy stuff, the big room with all the tables and all the books and the paintings and the artists and the autographs and all that stuff was there. And I was just walking around like buying random role-playing game books that look cool that I would never read but keep for a decade. And I saw from the distance this poster, and it was Shakan. It was the image that's on the comic, the original comic book. And it's like, okay, a cowboy, like a dead Clint Eastwood. That's what I saw, and I was like, that is cool. So I like a moth to the flame. I walked up to Robert Krause, who's the author of Shakan, and I walked up to him. I'm like, hey, dude, this character looks really cool. Can you tell me about it? And he told me the whole story. And, he was really nice, and he was really, here, have this little button with the guy's face on it. And, here, you could buy the book for $5. I'm like, all right, I'll buy it. And then I'm sorry I'm making this long, but you don't care, right? Yeah,
I love this.
All right,
it's amazing.
All right. So then I went home. I mean, not home. And then I went back to my hotel room, and I read the issue again and again. And I was like, this actually could be a cool game. I'm asking the question, could this be a game? You know what? The answer is yes. You know why? Because Shakan's goal is to die. And I love that. It's like in a video game world, it's all about extra lives. Like when you die, you use another life, and then you could get another life, and then you could find a power up and get another life. Life is like currency. Just collect it. And consume it and get more. And there's this, life is trivialized in a game like that. It's like life. Here's another life. It's nothing. It's a quarter, 25 cents for a life. And it just seemed, but Shakan, on the other hand, doesn't want to live. He wants to die. He's immortal, and his goal is to die. And I love the idea of, playing a game where the goal is to die. And of course he doesn't, and he can't.
Yeah.
Which is oh, poor Shakan. Which, by the way, Robert Krause, who's like the nicest person in the world, he pronounces Shakan shaken.
Oh, really? Shaken.
And I'm like, dude, there's no way you can't. It's not shaken.
Yeah.
But it's his character, so. Sorry, it's Shakan.
It's an amazing game, and it's a hard game, isn't it? It's a tough game, that one. I love the front cover as well. Iconic artwork. I mean, did you work on the sequel, Ed? I have to ask, because there's rumours there was a sequel being made, or.
I've always tried. I have a version of the game right now that I want to kickstart and get a modern version of the game. Yeah, so I'll never give up on it. Eventually. The stars and the money will align so that I could build another Shakan game, because I love the character and I want to kill him. It's just has to be done. So
wow, that would be amazing. I think loads of people right now listening going, please do that.
Yeah, I know the game was like super hard, and it was unfairly hard too. It wasn't just designed to be hard. It just was sloppily implemented in a lot of places. But sometimes the thing I like about that is the suffering that the player goes through is kind of mirrored by the character.
Yeah,
and suffering is an important part of gameplay, and especially in a Shakan the Forever Man context, you need a little suffering. So I let it be that hard, and I think like it might not be a good business decision, but a new Shakan will be intentionally the hardest game ever made.
Oh wow!
And yeah. I'll make it that way. And if you beat that game, you're on the top of Mount Everest, naked. That's how challenging. That's how challenging the game would be. And then you get on the leaderboard for beating that game. You'd be there for a decade. No one will get ahead of you.
Well, I think games have got easier since the 16-bit days, personally, over time. And actually, if you can make that new Shakan and make it really difficult, it would actually stand out, wouldn't it? Just for that stake, at least,
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, this I'd love to get it if this is true or not. Ecco the Dolphin, was he originally going to be called Delphinus? Is that right, Ed? Or is that...
Delphinus, the constellation,
right? Yes,
which is part of the Dolphin's mythology. But honestly, I wanted the game to be called Dolphin, just
Dolphin. Okay.
Yeah. I didn't like the idea that he had a name, because they're not humans, and they don't say hi, I'm Echo to each other. They emit virtual realities. They shoot virtual realities at each other's brains. So when a dolphin introduces itself to another, I'm sure it's not a name that they're saying. They're like showing a three-dimensional image with these to communicate that way. So it's very unlikely. There's a one or two syllable name for each of them. It's probably a different thing. So I didn't want any human elements in the game or game story at all. But Al Nielsen, who was the boss, said the dolphin needs a name. And so then Echo eventually came out.
Did you think of that Echo name, or was that just...
No, I was working for this awesome guy. His name was Clyde Grossman. He's like my Obi-Wan, and he came up with it. He didn't like the game idea at all.
Oh, really?
But yeah, and he was like, who wants to be a fish? That's like his thinking was, if you're playing a video game, you want to be the little character. So you want to be the plumber, or you want to be the blue hedgehog, I guess. So we're like, who wants to be a fish? That's what he said. He literally said that.
Yeah.
But as soon as as soon as momentum got, as soon as it was going to be a product, he got behind it, and he came up with the name ECHO, Echo. And I'm like, brilliant. But I changed it to ECCO, and that's it. Al was like, okay, and it was done.
I mean, it was a huge hit. It was a huge success. I don't know, Ed. I'd love to know if was it a surprise hit at the time?
It was a bigger hit than people realized. It was packed in with a whole bunch of different Genesis games, like the CDX. I don't know if you remember that.
Yes.
It was packed in with that, and a few other retail packages.
It must have been great to see it. Let's be honest, a slight gamble, possibly. A different sort of game. Actually, probably again, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Ed, but probably do better than expected. Is that fair? And was it amazing to see all the lovely accolades come in?
Well, the best part of it, I think, was like, Michael Jackson likes this game.
That's amazing.
And it's like, oh, cool. And then it's like, Michael Jackson wants to meet you. This is hanging out with Tom Kalinske, and I got to play with him. I showed him Echo 2, Tides of Time.
Yep.
And sitting on a piano bench with him, as I'm playing, he was singing the sort of music to it.
Wow.
Which was pretty cool. That was weird. And then somebody else. Oh, and then I got to know Stuart Copeland, who is the drummer of the Police.
Of course, yes.
He not only loved Echo, but he beat both games. And then I realized, drummers are good at video games. That's got to give them that. So having people that are famous like the game or notice the game was mind blowing for me.
I've got to ask you more about Michael Jackson. Sorry, Ed. I mean, I've heard it before because I know that Michael Jackson's met Michael Latham as well, and he was looking over. I don't know, it's the same day. But what exactly happened? Did he just come over to you and chat about Echo, or what happened exactly?
Well, I think he was coming because he's good friends with Al Nielsen and Tom Kalinske.
Yeah.
They were friends. So he was like, "Hey, I'm making all this up," but somehow he was coming to Sega, and he was going to walk around, and everybody was going to show him their thing or whatever. But yeah, he specifically wanted to see Echo, and then he just like somebody said, Michael Jackson's going to come over and show him Echo. Okay, I'm like, I'm kind of busy. Can he come back another time? But no, he's got to come now. All right. So he just walked in. He actually came in, and he was on crutches.
Oh.
He had a funny hat, and he just looked at me. I'm like, hi, and then here's the game, and we sat down, and it's a beautiful game, especially at the time. Tides of Time really looked beautiful. And so he responded, and I had the perfect level, the one with the nice Maxwell Parish sunset with the green hills and the gorgeous blue water and all the sea life. It was great. So he responded to have Michael Jackson sort of hum a soundtrack while playing your own game. It was a cool and haunting experience.
Amazing.
But yeah, that's all I remember.
That's amazing. I mean, I bet you wish you could have filmed that at least Michael Jackson's singing in the background.
Yeah. I wish I should have hit record on my iPhone. Oh, wait a minute. I don't even think cell phones existed back then.
Oh, man. I love the time travel elements. I'm a big fan of time travel films and books.
Yeah, me too.
Hands up. Yeah. Oh, I love them. I could talk about Back to the Future, and there's a great book called Replay I love. Why? That sound rude, but how did time travel come into the idea of Echo? That's amazing. It's not bizarre, but it's a crazy concept. But what went through your mind to get that into it?
Well, first, like you, I always love the narrative potential of time travel stories, and And I was just such a science fiction person. I had no choice but to figure out a way to get time travel into the game. But there is this cool thing I think about Echo, and it like you look at it, and like a lot of people would say, video games are violent and not good for kids. They should be regulated, but then there's this game like Echo where there's no violence in it. It's like, what? It's basically a survival horror game. Like everything wants to kill you and eat you. And it's scary. Nature is scary, and I loved the assumption of the soft. It's soft and blue and cute, but as the story continues, it gets crazier and crazier. Like aliens, time
amazing.
travel, Atlanteans, like crazy technologies, crazy story. End of the world, saved by a dolphin. Not a single human ever knew anything about it. I love the idea of the assumption of a simple, cute little game, but it unfolds into something that you didn't expect at all. And that's what kind of hooked me. Like how far can I take it? And then as soon as the time travel stuff starts happening, then that unlocks like a lot of possibilities.
Are you a Back to the Future fan then, Ed? I have to ask you.
Yeah, of course.
I love it.
Huge. But my favorite time travel movie of all time is Shane Carruth's Primer, which I think it is the best time travel movie ever made, even including Christopher Nolan's time travel movies. It was a great low budget film. The director, writer starred in it and did all the work, the sound effects, the editing, everything. The budget of the film was $7,000 total.
That's crazy.
And it's just, I think it's great. Primer, check it out.
I'm going to check that out.
Shane Carruth.
Ed,
I'm a huge fan.
Okay, I'm going to watch that. The Tides of Time, the sequel, was that your next game? Echo did well the first game. Was it always, wow, we need to get a sequel out there quickly, or was it always in the back of your mind that you wanted to take this further?
Oh yeah, so yeah, I mean, I had it nailed in my mind at least before the first game was done, so I knew where we were going. And I knew I had to try to make it a little easier the second time around, but I think I failed at that as well. But yeah, it was a momentum that existed before we finished the first game.
What was your main differences you wanted to bring into the sequel? Was there any big things you really wanted to implement, or is it just evolve it slightly kind of thing?
The whole dual future, going back and forth, sort of a vortex future or a non-vortex future. And then probably my favorite element, I don't even know what you just asked me, but I'm just going to ramble on about.
Go for it.
Trelia, the futuristic dolphin that comes back in time to bring Echo to the future. Because the rule, the time machine rule is you could only go back in time. You cannot go forward. If you want to go forward in time, simply stay there because we're all traveling forward in time. But if you want to go back, you got to find the time machine and go back in time. So the only way Echo could get to the future is if some entity comes back in time and grab him, and then when she returns, she takes him along, so I liked Trelia. I liked her and her relationship with the asteroid, which is that giant DNA molecule. That thing has a whole backstory, and so does she. And so I was excited to it wasn't really a debut of a character, but to me it was like she just shows up, she does her thing, she's gone. The conversation with Trelia is brief, But in my mind, there's this whole thing about her and how she relates to Echo and the whole world, and so that was my favorite part. The Tides of Time to get her in there. It was great.
Weird question, but have you ever swum with dolphins then, Ed?
No, that freaked me out. No, I don't want to do that. I know Al Nielsen did it once. I remember.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but no, I don't want.
Oh, fair enough.
Ever since Jaws, the movie.
Yeah,
Jaws,
yeah.
I can't. I jump in a swimming pool and I'm afraid that I'm gonna get eaten.
Again, there's some rumours going around, and I'd love to get this from your own perspective. Even was there an official third Echo game being made?
Yeah,
the Mega Drive, and was it replaced by Echo Junior? I would love to know what was this big decision, and were you happy about this, and what was going through during that time?
Well, it needed the third game. And no, Echo Junior was tangential because at the time my daughter was like 4 or 5 or something. Right, yeah. She was young, and it's like here, look at the dolphin. It's like she can't play. I had to make a game with a dolphin that my daughter could play, and then Echo Junior. And then because honestly, because Echo just did so well, at that point. I could make any game I wanted. There was a few years where and that's what Colibri, the Hummingbird, and just I could just do whatever I want. Okay, so I'm just going to be as weird and I'm going to do risky stuff. So I was like, I'm going to make a game for my daughter, and they were like, okay, and I just did and put it out there, and she got to play it. Probably a few other kids. But then I never got to the third game because I was at Sega for 8 years. And honestly, when in the game business, as you grow, the more you grow in the game business, the further you get away from game development. That's just the path. It's like producer, designer, then senior producer, and then executive producer, which you don't do anything, you just get your name on it or something, I don't know, and then after that you're director of product development or something like that, and then you're not working on games anymore. So I had to leave Sega to continue to grow. So I left before the third game, plus the Genesis was gone. 32X was, I don't know, I wasn't a huge fan, and then Saturn was, oh god. So there was no place for the third game. But the story and the and eventually I think it'll come. I think I'll get it. And I think I'm onto it right now where it could be good, but I got to work things out with Sega, and I'm patient. I'll sit here for another 10 years and then get the game. If that's what it takes, that's what's going to happen.
Well, I was going to ask it, sorry to interrupt. Do you own the rights for the Echo series or not? Or you don't have to answer if you don't want to.
I don't. So I don't really like to talk about that kind of stuff. But, Echo will always be mine. And even if you look at the Sega Genesis Mini thing that they're selling now, which is awesome. I bought 10 of them. On the back of the box, I mean, the first game you see on the back of the box is Echo, and if you read the text on the bottom, it says Ecco the Dolphin, originally created by Ed Annunziata. It's on the box. So Ecco the Dolphin was originally created by Ed Annunziata. That's how I'd like to leave it.
Yep, no, that's more than fine, and I think a lot of people would love to see another Echo game. Personally, I think there's definitely scope for it. I personally believe. Did you work on the Jurassic Park game, Ed, for the Mega CD?
Yes, the original one. Yeah.
Because I was speaking to Eric Quakenbush recently. He was involved in that as well. And what's your views on that particular game? Because it's got good reviews, and I've never played it myself. I really want to actually.
It's very. It's very well done, very well crafted game. I discovered Jurassic Park as a Crichton novel. You know, when it was a novel, it
Yeah.
wasn't a movie. There were nobody was even talking about movies then, and they floated it around. You know, there was a lady that handled all the licensing, and then like once a month, all the game producers and game people and marketing people would get together in this conference room, and Diane would show these properties of, you know, Beavis and Butthead. And it was like, first time I've seen Beavis and Butthead was in the conference room at SEGA. And I'm like, what the hell is this? How could you make a game out of that?
Yeah.
But it was funny. And then, you know, she was like, oh, then there was a pile of books of any of these stories, could be a game. You know, anybody wants to volunteer to review them. So we were like, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, comic books. Should that be a game? Oh, I don't know. This is weird. And then, you know, then Jurassic Park was one of them. So I volunteered to read it. So I was a Michael Crichton fan to begin with. And I just love the book so much. And so I pitched the idea of, you know, a Jurassic Park simulation. Like, what you want to do is like cultivate the dinosaurs. You want to do what the guy wanted to do in the book, which was make Jurassic Park. So we started working on that, and it was an internal development. It was for the Sega CD, and that did not work out well. That title never happened, but it spun off the Genesis. The Genesis version of the game. And so my involvement was like, I worked on the canceled version of that game. And then,
wow. Okay.
And then the Genesis game spun out of that.
I'm going to pronounce this wrong, I believe. Is it Calibri?
It's kind of a made up. Well, so yeah, Colibri. That's how I say it. But,
I'm a fan. I've got a 32X at home, Ed, and it's one of my favourite games on the system. It might even be my favourite. I'm not trying to give you a big head, but I love it. I think it's a great game.
Yeah, me too.
It's plays so well, and it's beautiful to look at, and I love those kind of side scroller shooters. But obviously, this is different. It had a different sort of vibe to it. Now, I don't want to. I have to say, I went on your Twitter account a few weeks ago, and you were doing a bit of a Colibri Q&A, and there was some brilliant stories. I love it if you can tell our listeners how you first came up with the idea for this game, because I think it's quite an interesting story, and just a little bit more sort of ideas of how you developed this. Is that right?
All right. So the notion was, Genesis did very well, and if you can imagine its growth as like a on a graph, it's like a mountain. So it's building, growing, and it peaks the top of the mountain. And now that the platform is old and newer ones are coming, the sort of installed base of the Genesis starts to fall. So that growth curve looks like a hill. But in the future, there's going to be another hill. It's called Saturn. Right now, there's 0 Saturns out in the market. But a year after the game, Saturn launches, there'll be like 1 million of them, and then there'll be 2 million of them, and then you'll have an installed base. So if you could imagine the graph as 2 mountains with a valley in between, which, hits 0. So at some point, there's not going to be any Genesis growth, or nobody will be playing it. And of course, Saturn doesn't exist yet. So there'll be a void of nothing. Yeah. Somebody came up with the idea of, and I think they called it the sleeve, which was immediately I hated it. They didn't get through the first sentence, and I hated it because I hated the idea of bridging the gap between, look, if we're going to do Saturn, let's go all in with Saturn. Let's not do this. But they wanted to do it. And then, the guy in charge of product development at the time, Joe Miller, the best guy in the world. He's passed away, unfortunately, but he was the best guy in the world, the best guy to work for. He convinced me. He said, look, It's 256 colors. You get a whole extra play field. Like he's telling me what I could use in the game. Like, this is why you want to do it. Don't worry about the two mountains and the bridging the gap between. All that's bullshit. It's 256 colors, not just 16. I'm like, all right, I'll think about it, but I don't want to do Ecco on it because it's a temporary platform. It's not the future. It's like a Band-Aid to reduce pain of the company. And I just didn't want Ecco kind of stuck to that. So I struggled for a minute. Just like, what can I do? and I knew that I was in this position where I could have said anything, and they probably wouldn't even have paid attention to what I wanted to build. They probably said, here's a budget, just build it. And if it's good, we'll publish it. And if it isn't, we'll cancel it. And that was, so I could have done anything. So I'm thinking, what can I do? And we were working on, we're working in this building in Redwood Shores. And I was a smoker. I'm not proud of that, but I was a hardcore smoker. And I'm outside, probably for the 10th time that day, smoking a cigarette, and a hummingbird, like as I inhaled, you see, I don't know if you know about cigarette smoke.
Yeah.
You inhale it, and then you exhale it, and that's part of the whole experience. So I'm like, inhale, and then hummingbird right in front of me, maybe two feet from my face, and I exhale. And a cloud of smoke, like right in the face of this like greenish hummingbird, and it took off. And I like forgot about it. But 24 hours later, I'm in the same place, smoking the same brand of cigarettes, and the little hummingbird like boom, appeared in front of me, and it was going chirp, 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 like high pitched little chirping, and I'm looking at it, and it's right in front of my face, and I could see that it's totally pissed off. I felt like it wanted to kill me because it remembered I blew smoke in its face, and so I was like, wow, that little tiny friggin' thing. I mean, it was like a bumblebee. So small. So then I had to research the animal, and I started to, I told you that little thing I do. Could this be a game? Could this be a game? Yeah. So like a hummingbird, could that be a game? And as soon as I learned about how badass these little guys are, like how they fly, like the way they fly, the physics is different than any other bird. So they hover,
don't they? They can hover. Almost.
Yeah, their wings move in figure eights, and they cause vortices around them, and that's what lifts them. So they fly like a dragonfly, not like a bird.
Amazing. Which
is, how cool is that? And plus,
really cool.
The way they do battle with each other, like in the wink of an eye, like they're moving at a different rate in time. Like their hearts are beating 220 times per minute. I mean, that's pretty fast. So they're very impressive little creatures. So I asked the question, can I make a game out of it? And I was like, yeah. And that was it. And then I got to make that. And it was very enjoyable. But right now we have a beautiful 3D colibri, and almost, looks real, like a real animal. So the next colibri is gonna really double down on time dilation, sort of the Matrix bullet time, and depth of field, because of scale. We're looking at things that are very tiny, and lots of zooming in and out. I think the next game is going to be awesome. I'm really excited about it.
You're making it now, Ed? Is that right? The sequel?
Yeah.
That's going to be great.
It's going to be great.
That's great. And Max Payne bullet time, that would be brilliant.
Yeah.
I love hummingbirds. I think they're incredible animals. Is it true that Collaborate and Echo, the two universes, coexist? Is there some truth in that, or is that?
There's a couple. There's threads and a deep backstory. There's threads that connect them, but it's just in my head, and who knows if that ever really emerges, or it's not that important. I think one thing that's the two games have in common is you don't have to be a human to be a hero. Like, you could save the world being only an inch long and weighing only 2 ounces. So, the non-human vibe, I think.
I love it. Have you ever thought about any other animals that you'd love to see in a video game?
Horses. I love horses. I grew up with horses, and eventually I'll make virtual horses. That's my next animal game, I guess. Cool. Yeah, that is cool.
So you weren't really a fan of the 32X then, but you went away with, you still went on with it, and you produced a good game. Yeah.
We tried to do a 3D. I wish I still had this, like 3D colibri flying into the Z, behind the hummingbird. Yeah. And actually got that working, but the frame rate was so slow. It just didn't. It just wasn't good enough, and so I cut it. But it was like, it did have, like, there was more power and more to work with there. So I did. I was sold, kind of. I guess I just made the best of it. I was like, okay, I'll like this thing now. I forced myself to see what was good about it. Now I'm really, man, how happy am I? It's my only 32X title, and kind of wish I did more than one. And I wish I put more budget, more time into Colibri. But actually, then I would have missed that opportunity, that short opportunity when people are actually buying 32X games.
It's a bit of a shame, isn't it? Because I don't suppose that many people have played that particular game of yours, because it is quite. They didn't sell very well, did it? The 32X, and it's quite a rare game.
Honestly, I have no idea how it sold. I wasn't really privy to sales then, and I didn't even care.
Fair dues. Quickly on the Saturn, because you worked on some pretty iconic games there as well. 3 Dirty Dwarfs, Mr. Bones. I mean, 3 Dirty Dwarfs, a really original, again, another really original, respected title. What was your idea for that game? And is it true you voiced one of the dwarfs, Ed? Is that true?
Yeah, I'm Greg.
Nice.
That game was. I don't know. It was good. I enjoyed it. That is, like, if you could quantify laughter.
Yeah.
3 Dirty Dwarves, me and everybody who worked on that title laughed so much making that game, because like even the orcs. I don't know if you know the game, but there's these 3 dwarves, like, from a D&D universe.
Yeah.
They teleport to the Bronx, New York. But as they teleport to the Bronx, New York, to save the kids that are playing the role-playing game that made them, the orcs, the bad guys, are coming through the gate as well. So there's orcs in the Bronx, and I'm from the Bronx, and I got this whole New York thing, and I just, everything from my childhood and my crazy life, I just stuffed into this game, and then it was so fun. So the reason why I brought up the orcs is that everybody who worked on the game, all the developers, the testers, the artists, the musicians, everybody played a voice in the cartoons.
Oh, brilliant!
And it just was. It was so great. It was so great.
That's brilliant. And Mr. Bones as well, another cult classic. Well, that was another. You have been involved in some very original games, actually. I like, Ed. You always seem to try new things. Really quickly on Mr. Bones. How do you reflect on this particular game? And it was quite a divisive title. Some people either loved it or even hated it. What are your particular views on Mr. Bones?
My Well, you know, so I loved Mr. Bones the character.
Yeah.
And then as the story evolved in my head, you know, I really fell for the character. And also the notion of, you know, the crazy gameplay, like every level would be, you know, you don't know what to expect. And try to, you know, mechanically do something innovative, fun, weird, unusual, and then with the character. It was a bit of a struggle. The game overall was a struggle because the Saturn as a platform, in my opinion, was just not good. It was just not.
Could I ask you
good.
why though? Because some people love the Saturn, but others, you know, yeah, I'd love to know what
Well, I love it too. Like it doesn't even need to be plugged in or hooked up to a monitor, and I still love it. Like I love it as an object and as a piece of my own history, but as a piece as a console, it sucked. And I'm sorry, because in a way, it was powerful enough that you'd be tempted into 3D, but it wasn't powerful enough to really be 3D. So it was like this like little valley between two hills. It's like it, you know, had two Hitachi CPUs, two of them. Originally, those CPUs were used in rice cookers.
Right.
And it's not that powerful. Okay, let's put two of them in there. And it's okay, great. Now we got two CPUs. Like, how do you program for that? It's like, okay, here's all these, you know, open source, you know, GNU C compiler and like a debugger that never worked, not once. But you know, here it is, and it's just the tools were crap and the display was crap. And you know, like a fatal mistake I think with Mr. Bones was not to make him pre-rendered. Right. As opposed to like to do them in real time with polygons, and they alias like crazy. So it's like Mr. Bones, he should just be called Static Man because he's like made out of staticky pixels. Yeah. And even now, like you know, play that guitar duel, which is one of my favorite levels in the game. I really like it because you could like feel like you're really playing guitar, and you could originate music with that mechanism. Unlike you know, Guitar Hero, where all you could do is allow the music to happen. But anyway, I look at Mr. Bones standing there on the hill, and I'm like, God, it looks like crap. Oh, no. And it's heartbreaking. So yeah, I hated the Saturn, and I feel like in a lot of ways, Mr. Bones, you know, was my defeat with that platform. Like Three Dirty Dwarves was the way to go. It's 2D, but lots of parallax, like sort of pseudo 3D, you know, but with 2D sprites, lots of scaling, and very simple 3D objects. That worked. But Mr. Bones, you know, having, I don't know what, 30 or 48 different bones and I don't know how many polygons, just wasn't a real-time character. It was a little bit before its time.
Did you ever get... Yes, I was going to ask about the Dreamcast. Mr. Bones sounds like it could have worked better on that particular console. Do you think, Ed? Or...
Yeah, it would have been. Yeah, that would have been great. Yeah. But you know, I think, you know, Mr. Bones is fun, and you know, I think there's some great levels in that game, and yeah, I'm very proud of it. Yeah. All the side scroll platformy kind of levels, I would have cut, if I could go back in time, I'd cut them all out of the game and just make it a pile of the mini games that Mr. Bones is.
Do you did you ever get a chance to work on the Dreamcast, or did you leave Sega by then?
I had made a deal with Bernie Stoller for Shakan the Forever Man on the Dreamcast.
Oh wow!
And I got, we were down to the contract, but then I don't know what happened. Dreamcast died. Bernie left, and then it just never happened. So I missed the Dreamcast. I was there. I had it.
Yeah.
And it was gonna be a good game, but just missed it.
Michael Latham was head of the Omega team, I believe, at Sega.
Yeah.
You were head of the Alpha team. Michael spoke in the past how you had a kind of good sort of friendly rivalry with each other, and you kind of not helped, kind of what's this team doing? What's this team doing? How would you review on those two particular teams and your sort of role in that position?
So we weren't the Alpha team. We were the Amoeba.
Amoeba, sorry.
Yeah.
My apologies, sorry.
The people. I think it was Mike who referred to us as Alpha because it's the opposite of Omega, which totally makes sense. But I couldn't just be a Greek symbol. It had to be something weird. So an animated amoeba popped into my mind, and so we decided the group would be called the Amoeba team. And I think Colibri is probably the only game that featured that intro at the beginning.
Okay. Yeah.
There was it was funny. It was Mike's team was on the other side of the building. There were so many things that separated us, for no reason, but it just ended up that way. But the thing about Mike and I used to go to lunch a lot. We're both really into pizza, and so the thing that was great about Mike is he was like me. He was he could just talk about games all day.
Yeah.
Some other people are let's talk about our girlfriends and cars, maybe politics, but me and Mike were just all about games and ideas for play mechanics, and so we're kindred spirits in that way. But of course, it's competitive. It's who's gonna his games sold. My games were weird enough for people to talk about, but he would make games that actually sold. Right, so Eternal Champions. I don't know how if it was a huge hit, but that was a pretty cool game, and I remember Eternal Champions in every 7-Eleven for a year.
Yeah,
it was all over the place. So we I think we had a good healthy kind of rivalry thing going.
Yeah. Good stuff. I like to ask people who worked at Sega about their opinions of Sega of Japan versus Sega of USA, Sega of America. I've heard different stories about sometimes they weren't always working well together, but I'd like to hear your personal opinion, Ed, if that's all right.
Honestly, I wasn't really that exposed to the guy. The SOJ Sega of Japan guys would come, and then I'd show them. I remember showing them Spider-Man. It's they tried to. So in Spider-Man, when you jump on the wall and you want to stick to the wall, you hold the stick button, but you hold it. And then when you let go of the stick button, he lets go of the wall. So that's I don't know. For some reason, they didn't like that. They wanted you press the button, and he sticks to the wall. You don't have to hold the button anymore. Right. I'm I know it's a subtle thing, and it's not that big of a deal. But I could watch kids play it. They would try to stick on the wall, try to stick on the wall, try to stick on the wall, and they couldn't stay on the wall. And their initial feel that no one got the hold the button to remain stuck on the wall.
Right, yeah.
And so I remember the SOJ guys going, they're talking to each other. I don't understand them. And then somebody explains that they don't think you should stick to the wall. You should hold the button to stick to the wall. So I was all right, I'll change that. Of course I didn't. And then, but you know what? And then I was they actually were commenting on a very specific part of the play mechanic. And so the respect, these guys were in suits and they're talking about Spider-Man sticking to the wall. So I respected the hell out of them in terms of even though I ignored them. But you know, they were like talking about games like me and Mike would.
Yeah.
And so I really liked those guys when they came around. I never got to go to Tokyo, and I never got to meet anybody there. But yeah, that was my exposure to them. You know, Tom Kalinske, Joe Miller, Steve Payne, Al Nielsen, the guys that ran Sega of America at the time. They dealt with Sega of Japan, and it was their world. Like that they were the ones that made the 32X and made the Genesis not be called Mega Drive, and they made things like for some reason Sonic was he was the head of a band of hedgehogs. Yeah. You know, he's like a rock and roll. So Al is like, no. This is how Sonic's going to be, and he was, you know, dead on, and he, you know, so those guys really made the company, and I, you know, they protected us from, you know, from SOJ when, you know, when they were unhappy with what we were doing. I remember, you know, Nakayama, who's pardon me, who's the CEO or the founder of Sega. He's pretty intense. I had produced Mario Lemieux ice hockey, and at the same time, EA's I can't remember the name of their hockey game, but their vertical hockey game just kicked the crap out of my horizontal hockey game. Right. And Nakayama told somebody who subsequently told me that this hockey game is an embarrassment to the company. It's like, oh God, oh no, man. Don't hold back, dude.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's like, oh, they or he could be brutal.
Yeah.
But years later, I got to polish off a couple of bottles of wine with him, and he's a lovely man. He's got great stories, and yeah, I forgave him for saying that.
Yeah, not fair
drinking $200 bottles of wine.
Good times.
Yeah.
A couple of final questions on Sega, and then I want to talk briefly about the rest of your career, because I know there's other things to talk. You know, I mean, but I'd love to know: did you, apart from Michael Jackson, did you meet any other celebrities while working at Sega?
Stuart Copeland. I got to hang out with Denzel Washington for like almost an entire day, and John Singleton. Actually, John Singleton is the director and writer of Boys in the Hood, and
yes,
a whole bunch of great movies. Unfortunately, he passed away a couple of years ago because he didn't take his blood pressure medicine, and he got a bad stroke, and he died. And he was a young man. He's younger than me.
Wow, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, but he's a great director. I got to hang out with him because he wanted to make the Ecco the Dolphin movie, and he beat both games. So he was a gamer, and he was great. So I got to hang out with him, and then he's friends with Denzel, and I got to hang out with Denzel, and that was fun. And some, you know, and then I got to watch Natural Born Killers with Oliver Stone and
brilliant.
Robert Downey Jr. They were sitting on either side of me.
That's crazy.
Little theater, and then Woody Harrelson starts murdering people, and it was like, it was surreal.
Wow!
Just to see that movie, like Rodney Dangerfield is in that. That movie is crazy.
It's a good film. It's a good film, isn't it?
I just think it's just so crazy. It has to be respected, and it's definitely enjoyable. You know, if you don't mind the brutal violence.
Yeah, it is a bit.
But right when the movie ended, Oliver Stone came up to me and said, "So what'd you think?" I'm like, "Wow." I think I just stuttered and then looked at my finger. I didn't know what to say. And I didn't even know why he was asking me. But then, like, in retrospect, the reason why I was there, like, somebody at Sega said, "Hey, you should, you know, get these game guys." I was there with a few other game guys. Can't remember who. But it was like, could it be a game? That's what somebody was asking, and that's why I was there, and I didn't even realize it.
Wow, could you imagine the game? Oh, that'd be amazing.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Well, Ed, you got to talk to me quickly about this Ecco the Dolphin movie. I didn't realize there's one in development. But how far? What sort of story would it be? How would that have?
Oh, yeah, it was. John got there. Oh, I'm so sorry, I can't remember the guy's name, but he is the guy who wrote the screenplay for The Land Before Time, which is the cartoon about little dinosaurs.
The Don Bluth film, isn't it? Yeah, it's a cartoon.
Yeah, was it Bluth? Yeah, so the guy who wrote that worked with John to develop the script for Ecco the Dolphin, and like 2 or 3 things happened simultaneously. Like John was into it and he was spearheading it, and then I got to become friends with him just because he was into Ecco, and he was working on this on his own dime, or however he worked out the deal. He got that script done. I did not like it at all because they just turned it into Ecco's lack of he has low self-esteem, and then he goes with his friends and they go on this event. They got rid of the aliens, got rid of the time travel. I'm like, what? Little kids don't like time travel. I'm like, yeah, they do. Yeah. And then I don't know what happened. It just sort of fizzled. It just didn't happen. I don't know because I was unhappy or whatever, but you never know what will happen in the future.
Yeah.
I think the movie exists like in a decade, or maybe less.
That would be amazing. Look, maybe this is a little segue of you leaving Sega, Ed, but is it true that Tiny Tank, one of the games you worked on, was originally going to be made at Sega, but it was one of your games you developed just after leaving? Is that fair?
Yeah. Like, Tiny was always a character I had in my mind. I don't know if there was a character, Mr. Bill from Saturday Night Live. He was like a little clay character, and he'd die horribly. Oh no, Mr. Bill! You know that?
No, I don't. No, I'm afraid I don't. Sorry.
Yeah, that's probably wasn't popular in the UK. Anyway, so it was a character that had this kind of voice, talk like this. So I love the idea of the killing machine that talked like that. That was originally what Tiny's voice was going to be like, and I always had this character in mind. And then the idea that it's a character and a vehicle at the same time. The play mechanic, I think the play mechanic of Tiny Tank is awesome. The game suffers from a low frame rate, but a modern version of it I think would be stellar. So I did want to do Tiny for Sega. I might have even pitched it. I can't remember, but I also remember we're not there yet with 3D, and it's just this has to be a 3D title, and so I didn't push it that hard. But then when I left Sega, I pitched it to MGM, and they were like, okay, we'll fund this. They gave me the money. We built it, and then they went out of business, or they got out of the game business and sold it to Sony, and then I finished it with Sony and put it out PlayStation 1.
I could say it. Good. I haven't played it. I'll be honest here, but I know it's good reviews. It's well respected, isn't it? Why did you leave Sega, if you don't mind me asking? That's a bit of a slightly personal question, but were you ready for a new challenge, or?
Yeah, just I had to. I couldn't, like I told you before, I couldn't. You can't. You have to grow, right?
Yeah.
You have to in order to be satisfied with life, you have to learn new things and deploy those learnings and do great things and live your life through growth and learning. So the path that as you become an adult in the video game industry back then is like you work on games less.
Yeah.
And I couldn't do that. So after 8 years, I was like, I have to start my own company and, double down on game development as opposed to leave it and be an executive producer or whatever. So I was, I didn't want to, but I had to.
Yeah.
It's kind of time.
I get that. And you've had a very successful career as an independent developer. I think is it Play to Me you work at now?
Play to Me. It's like
Play to Me. Yeah, that makes sense. That actually makes sense. Yeah. before you started that business, you worked at Nokia for a bit on the N-Gage console? Is that true, Ed?
I did 2 years. Yeah, that was fun.
What an interesting little machine. Obviously, it wasn't particularly a good seller, but what was your role at Nokia at the time? Because they were so big at one point. People forget how big Nokia were, weren't they? And quite an interesting idea.
Yeah. Okay. So I ran the game studio in San Francisco, and there was another much bigger one that got most of the budget up in Vancouver.
Right.
So me and a bunch of ex-SEGA guys, because Nokia bought the Snap. It was a multiplayer framework for Java, J2ME games. Yeah, that's right. And they were building some multiplayer thing called Arena, which I think Mike Latham actually created the Heat network, and then Nokia bought it. And buying that, they also bought some people to go along with it. So I weaseled in there, and I liked the N-Gage, the original one, the Taco, because it was such a weird thing. It had an FM radio.
That's mad.
It's like, why? I mean, I think there was a can opener somewhere in there. And the other funny thing about it was, like, the guys at Nokia, in Finland decide, let's make a game phone. So they found this phone. It was like another failed project. It was for something else. It was like the businessman's multimedia Symbian device. It wasn't a game. It wasn't for games. But they repurposed it, and they made it the N-Gage. And they said, you buy the game that you want, you take the battery out, you put the game in, then you put the battery back, then you put the cover of the N-Gage back together, and now you have the game. So it's like, so every time you want to change the game, you got to take the battery out.
Yeah.
Yes, but once you put the game in, you have the game. It's like, they didn't even get that you're going to want to put frequently change the game.
Yeah.
They figured, you chose the game that you wanted, now you have it.
Yeah.
And it's there, fine. So it's like, there's like a bit of a cultural thing or something.
Yeah.
But my big idea was Mile High Pinball, and I think that's by far the best. And obviously I'm biased, but damn, I think it's the best N-Gage game that exists. But it was an enjoyable 2 years. It was frustrating for me because everything I presented was shot down. Even Mile High Pinball, the only reason why it exists is because they couldn't kill it, because we did it so inexpensively. It just didn't make sense to kill it. But, we had like a golf title, they killed it. We had a poker title, they killed it. We had this space shooter like Star Raiders, but 10 times better with server-served aliens and all kinds of great stuff. They killed it. So it was like 2 years of
a weird time.
Kill. And then I was like, okay, goodbye. and then I had to leave.
And then, Ed, you went on to obviously create your own companies. Really briefly, because I know we've been talking for a long time now. What have you?
I'm gonna hang up soon.
That's fine, Ed. But what's really quickly? What sort of games are you working on right now? Then?
I'm making some games on this new display technology from a company called Leia. Am I allowed to talk about it? I think I'm allowed to talk about this. Yeah. So. Because my games are on. So they have this technology. It's sort of like 3DS, the Nintendo 3D DS. So it's like that, but it's an iPad, like the size of an iPad. And the 3D without glasses or anything looks stunningly good. So I got to put a couple of my games. Super Smash Ball is on there. Slice, which is the puzzle game with sharp knives. All stick, no carrot. And I'm working on another game called Baby Boom that I'm trying to get on there, and another game. So working on those games.
Beautiful.
For that company, for that technology. which is exciting. And then got some Dolphin stuff going and some VR stuff going. But the way I work is I just push each thing a little bit. If I get it an inch forward, that's good. And then I go to the next one and move that one an inch forward, and I just keep doing it until they ripen to the point where I can make a deal with somebody and then actually, get it out into the market. So I've got several games kind of in that nebulous pandemic state.
Yeah, Ed, you've been a real. I mean, it's been a brilliant interview. I really appreciate your time. I've really enjoyed your answers. So many great stories. Obviously, you're on Twitter.
Yeah. Oh, thanks for saying that. I forget to say, please push my Twitter. It's the only social media I do. So yes, please continue. What were you going to say about my Twitter?
I was just going to say your handle, but I don't want to get it wrong. I should have it saved up here. Do you want to give? What is your handle on Twitter? If you don't mind me asking.
It's Ed Annunziata.
There you go, Ed Annunziata. Yeah. Yes. So honestly, Andy, you do some really good sort of Q&As and some great stuff on there. Actually, I have to say.
Thank you.
I've got one final question we ask all our guests, and it's a bit of a silly question, but it's been such a pleasure. But the final question I want to ask you, Ed, is if you could share a few drinks with any video game character, who would you choose and why?
If I could have a drink with a character.
A few drinks with a character. Have a bit of a laugh.
A few.
Yeah.
It can't be one of mine, right?
It can be. It can be.
I wish I knew about this question before you asked it.
Mr. Bones would be very good, wouldn't he? Because the drinks would go straight through him. But
yeah. But he'd have something funny to say.
He would, actually.
Let me think. Just give me a second. You could edit out my think time, right?
No problem. Yeah, no
problem.
Give
me a second to think about it. That's a great question. Who? I think the dude from Red Dead Redemption.
Oh, yes. The main character.
I want to have whiskey in a dirty glass with that guy.
That's a new answer. I'll tell you what, we usually get Lara Croft as the answer. I'll tell you. But that's a great answer, yeah.
Yeah, I'm married.
Red Dead. Yeah, no, good. No, fair enough, Ed. That's a great answer. And thank you so much for your time today, Ed. I really mean it. And it's been a real pleasure and honour.